If you haven't noticed lately, the worst thing that you can be is average. The worst social sin is not being mean or being evil or like being a bad person. The worst social sin you can do right now in our current like cultural climate is to be one of the masses. And if you look around lately, like above all the chaos of what's happening, this is a mechanism that a lot of people are using to just make themselves feel better. This idea that they are different and better and separated from everybody else. We can separate ourselves, and that by comparison, we can get a sense of inner worth because hey, at least I'm not that guy. The biggest way we do this as like a species in general is obviously about money and wealth. Like if you have more money, you're just a better guy, you're just more valuable, and needing to be exorbitantly wealthy or like very rich for a lot of people heals this wound inside of them that they feel like they're not good enough. It also physically separates you from the masses in a really major way. You don't fly commercial, for example. You're not eating at the same restaurants. You're not walking on the same streets. You're quite literally like separated. This can also be diving into conspiracy theories where you think you understand the world on a deeper and better level than everyone else, and you see through the lies that everyone else sees, and everyone else is just sheep, and you're just like the really smart one. This can also show up in the weird phenomenon that's going on that I'm actually guilty of being a part of, where we are obsessed with like comparing ourselves to LOL cows or people that are obviously rage baiting everyone, like Bonnie Blue or Ash Trevino, or even body cam videos of people acting insane. Like we watch these and we think, I would never do that. And that's like a deeply satisfying way to spend your days, to like compare and to feel better. There is also a growing belief that beauty, attractiveness, and even like health gives you like a moral and existential superiority over everyone else. And it just makes you better than someone you pass on the street if you're more beautiful, if your looks maxing harder than them. If you're going to the gym more, if you're eating healthier, you're better than them. And lastly, maybe the most extreme version of this separation is greed and cruelty, because when you're literally in a position of power over other people and you're becoming like Machiavellian, you quite literally do feel so much better and so much different than everyone else. So why are most people drawn to this separation and to needing to feel different than everybody else? I want to argue that it's actually an easier path than really getting to know yourself, because sometimes that can be very painful and hard, and we all have an issue with that. Nietzsche said a really convoluted quote about self-knowledge that begins like, "We have never searched for ourselves. How should it be then come to pass that we should ever find ourselves? Where your treasure is, there will your heart be also. Our treasure is there, where we stand, the hives of our knowledge. It is to those hives that we are always striving, as born creatures of flight and as the honey-gatherers of the spirit. We care really in our hearts only for one thing, to bring something home to the hive." So yes, Bugonia has a lot of honey and bee metaphors, and that kind of is something that's not lost on me. Now this quote like sounds really confusing, but he's basically saying that self-knowledge is not a passive gift, but is something that you have to seek out yourself. But most people are too busy chasing other easier to achieve gifts and knowledges, and we are mostly strangers to ourselves who don't understand our inner desires, our motives, or whatever, because we don't seek ourselves out. We're too busy chasing our obsessions or comparing ourselves to other people. Now this conundrum is where our story starts and ends. In Bugonia, Teddy, as Nietzsche said, becomes sunken in the seas of his own soul, and his obsessions literally turn him into a serial killer and also completely ruin his earthly life and drive him to torture somebody. So today I'm gonna obviously be talking about Bugonia, and there will be full spoilers because this is a full analysis and breakdown of the plot. So if you haven't seen it yet, so it's a very actually limited cast and characters, which I think is very unique for this director specifically. I think there's usually more convoluted stuff going on in his other films, and like this is really pretty straightforward, and I think that's because it's a remake, but I'm just a huge fan of the movie. So Michelle Fuller, played by Emma Stone, is a CEO of a pharmaceutical company and is abducted by Teddy and his neurodivergent cousin Donnie, who is very impressionable and is essentially taken care of by Teddy. Dawn is very sweet and trusting, and Teddy is conspiratorial and manic, and obviously they're both traumatized. Teddy seems exhausted and beaten down by a system that does not care for him, and there is seemingly no social safety nets or community or tradition for either of these two boys left in this family. So Michelle gets kidnapped by the two boys, but obviously Teddy is the ringleader. Dawn does not want to hurt anybody. This happens because Teddy thinks that Michelle, the CEO, is an alien from the planet Andromeda. And spoiler alert, she literally is. It's revealed at the end that she is an alien. So Teddy's theory comes from conspiracy theories online and his own weird experiments. He's obviously fallen into some really weird rabbit holes, but then also he literally is kidnapping and torturing people with voltage in his basement and dissecting them to see what the differences are between Andromedans and humans, because they seemingly look the exact same from the outside. It's really interesting though, because Teddy is not like a sociopath, or even like, he doesn't have antisocial personality disorder, I don't think. He seems from the outside like a normal person who has become completely separated and traumatized, and who has totally separated and isolated himself from society. So he is electrocuting people and seeing if they live past a certain voltage, and if they do, then they are Andromedans. He's like decided that. So the reason he kidnaps Michelle is he thinks that he can try and use her as a bargaining tool for the aliens to leave Earth, so that, as Teddy keeps saying throughout the movie over and over again, that everything will be okay and everything will be good again. It's kind of this really sad, almost like pitiful idea that once the aliens have left the Earth, everything will just fall into place. Their family will be back together and like they will be happy again. That's obviously not gonna happen though. So Teddy tortures Michelle in his basement, and he does things like shave her head and cover her in antihistamine cream, buckles her to a cot and like leaves her in a really, really dirty basement. He's interrogating her, and the reason he cuts her hair off is because he thinks that that's how she communicates with her people, and he's actually right about that. She does communicate with her ship through her hair. So most of the film is a back and forth between Teddy and Michelle, and she pleads, begs, bargains, and tries to escape, obviously, while Teddy becomes increasingly paranoid, angry, and frustrated. It then turns into a black comedy horror story where it's like a captivity thriller, and it's just very dialogue heavy, and I really think if this is intriguing you, you should definitely see it, because it's something that I can't even explain. They are in Teddy's hellish basement because Teddy and Dawn's house is very unkempt and almost like really dirty, and they only eat processed or pre-made foods. Teddy doesn't really cook at all, and he's just grabbing shit from the frozen section all the time. And there is nothing really wrong with that in itself, but like the idea that they seemingly have no community, the house is unkempt, they're living in poverty, and they don't really nourish themselves is really troubling, and is like a symptom of their poverty. They are forgotten rural Americans with no social safety net. So before they even kidnap Michelle, the two boys are like trying to prepare for this, and one of the things they do to prepare is like exercise, but Teddy also chemically castrates them. So this part is really, really hard to watch. So the places surrounding the boys are also in poverty. Personally, I'm like a huge fan of middle America, rural kind of scenery, especially in movies like Bones and All and A Desert, and even like Buffalo 66. I think it can be so rugged and so beautiful. That's part of the reason I moved here, is because I love American landscapes. I love rural American landscapes. I've driven across it, and there is a really specific way that it is pictured in this film that is bleaker, more nihilistic, and more depressing than basically anything like it. The way that the scenes in Bugonia are shot are not romantic. They are bleak, and they come off like a society that is nearing the end. Like, it is run down strip malls a very sad break room, grocery stores, and shots of the super bright inside of a thrift store that just look not welcoming and they look awful. And the scenes of Teddy and Dawn's daily life and existence are so starkly contrasted with Michelle's life before she gets kidnapped. Michelle's life is well lit, green, luxurious, clean, minimalistic, organized. It's just like wealthy. And we see scenes of Michelle working out too, kind of in the same sequence that the boys are working out. And Michelle's workouts are obviously with more resources. Like, she just has more resources. It's this crazy contrast. So flashbacks also reveal that Teddy's mom was essentially put into a coma by a drug trial by Michelle's company. So that adds a little bit of personal issue into this. So while torturing Michelle in the basement with electricity, Teddy realizes Michelle is actually a really high-ranking member of her alien species because she can tolerate like inhuman levels of electricity. So he invites her upstairs for dinner. They have a really interesting conversation about who is to blame for why the world is so shitty. So Michelle, in order to escape, tells Teddy that she has a special alien potion in her car that will wake up his mother, but it's actually just antifreeze. So Teddy rushes to the hospital and he injects this antifreeze into his mom's IV bag. She obviously dies. Teddy is totally destroyed. Like, he's manic. He's totally crazy. The very idea that Teddy doesn't get caught right away is also like a middle America commentary in itself, that hospital is extremely understaffed. So during this time where Teddy is gone to see his mother at the hospital, Michelle has been talking to Dawn alone for the first time, and it is very sad, but Dawn actually commits with a gun because the mixture of like Michelle pleading to escape and promising him things and Teddy's like indoctrination is just too much for him to handle. And I do think this is like a metaphor for like the loss of innocence that can come from something like what Teddy is doing. Like, people getting caught up in it that should not be, because even with the best intentions, Teddy is ruining his life and destroying other people's lives too. So long story short, it ends in like a knockdown drag out thing where Teddy tries to go to Michelle's transporter to her ship and she actually gets away, and then like he blows up and it's just crazy. But what's important is that she's revealed to be an alien, and ultimately everybody dies when Michelle gets back to her ship and decides that the human experiment is a failed one, and she basically pops a bubble that kills everybody on the entire planet instantaneously. And at the end of the film, there are these beautifully shot yet really eerie shots of places all across the globe of people dead. The people shown collapsed and dead range from people in clubs to businessmen to people working in fish factories. Now that is the entire plot of the film, and now I want to talk about what this means for nihilism and why this movie is so dark and its message is extremely bleak. So the first thing is that Teddy is right. Like, his conspiracy is right. He's in theory doing a good thing, but his outcome is awful and his physical reality is not matching up to what he thinks his values are. And I think fundamentally that is very, very sad. Teddy in this film is our central character because he is the perfect example of true separation from others on his own accord. He thinks he is much smarter than everybody else. He like says that basically in not so many words because he understands this alien conspiracy. Like, he got it right. He's the one doing the real work. But his physical reality has not improved since he's discovered this truth. And his physical reality is awful. The home in which he lives, the food he eats, his community, his relationships, the well-being of his cousin, like his only family member, it's all very bleak and it's not looking good. And this is not fully Teddy's fault. This society in Bugonia is obviously like exactly ours. and there is a gigantic wealth gap, and Teddy's trauma and poverty led him to this conspiracy rabbit hole. There's even a line in the film where he describes that he's been led into other rabbit holes before. So it's not a problem of which one he's led into and which one is right. It's the problem of it consumes him in a way that distracts him from his awful reality, and then in turn, it's a vicious cycle. Teddy's obsession with the conspiracy, true or not, literally ruins his life and takes away everything. Yes, this is a result of him not knowing himself, but it's also a result of his reality and things outside of his control. He's not given a livable wage. What is he supposed to do? He even immediately forgives someone who admits and apologizes for molesting him. And instead of like getting angry or even getting traumatized, his initial reaction is like apathy. So he's been just totally betraying his own feelings for so long he doesn't really know what to do with them. He's desensitized to what he wants and what he actually values. So Teddy's physical reality is not mirroring what he thinks he values, because what he thinks he values is like family and the world and the earth. But like what he's doing is torturing people, killing innocent people, and causing the destruction of basically all mankind. Now, Michelle is the opposite of Teddy, but she is a really good example of this, even if she is an alien. So for like a little bit of background, Bugonia is a remake of a Korean film. It's an early 2000s black horror comedy, much like Bugonia, and it's called Save the Green Planet. And it is essentially the same setup, but Yorgos's movie, to me, is a lot darker in tone and a lot more serious with its warning and with its nihilism. But in both films, there's an interaction between the alien billionaire CEOs and someone that works for them. In Save the Green Planet, the alien CEO disrespects a cab driver by not giving him enough fare, and it is very overt and aggressive, and it's very obviously like he's a total dick. But in Bugonia, Michelle asks her assistant to put out a vague letter, but the vibe of the interaction is that everyone at her company should be expected to work beyond what they should be working, and they will have no work-life balance. That's the vibe of the interaction. And I think this difference goes beyond like just cultural and language differences. It is the reason that this is a fantastic movie to be remade, because corporate desensitization to like cruelty has become less overt, because overtness can get you in trouble, and now it's more like bureaucratic and sinister and more passive aggressive in ways that you can't really pinpoint. And Michelle makes this like decision for her company with no inkling of an idea that it would ever have a consequence on her. And she's just passing any sort of suffering she can onto other people with no thought whatsoever. Now, these two characters directly affect each other, even if one is a billionaire and one is in poverty. These two are a symbol for the interconnectedness of humans, and regardless of how incredibly separated they might be, at the end, they are all hopelessly and deeply interconnected. Now, Michelle's reality does not match her supposed values either. It's almost like she's been tainted by Earth, and Earth's circumstances have made her like a worse person. Michelle seems to be a part of this like Andromedan society who seems to be more organized, empathetic, and less cruel. She also says something deeply human to Teddy where she's like, I'm successful and you're not, that's just the way it is. And it just seemed like immature, and it seemed like a huge point for her being human is her saying that. She's also like singing Chapel Roan in the car. She says that humans are just apes, but like obviously she's becoming enmeshed in the human culture. So Bugonia says this idea that if you're on Earth, no matter what you do, you're hopelessly enmeshed in this human consciousness. And it doesn't matter how much you try and differentiate yourself or try to be good or try to be successful or better than everyone else. We will absorb the worst consequence of what the worst people are doing. And that is deeply nihilistic. That Bugonia is saying that there is no escape from this consequence, no matter how good you might be. And the only way to not be enmeshed in this consequence is to not be on Earth. because everyone on Earth at the end of this movie is dead. And I think that's a lot of our biggest fear right now, because we're living in a time where people are totally crazy and we're scared of living in the consequence of those people's actions, even though we're already living in the consequence of those people's actions. We kind of think as a society that bad things happen to bad people and good things happen to good people, but that is like a philosophy that is not like a proven phenomenon. I think what is so dark and disturbing about Bugonia is it represents the idea that there is no escape from the collective decisions of humans, and because of that, it argues that we should not even be here at all. This film asks you to look at humanity as a whole and to imagine how we would be judged all together rather than individually. By like an alien observer who sees us as one connected organism, how would we be judged? We're all here together on the earth, which is a major theme in the film, but that is like how we are judged in the end of Bugonia, is like all together, every human on the earth. So this film argues that there is no escape, and that as a species, we've already been judged, and we're like fruits on a tree, and it does not matter how much more tasty your fruit is, you will be judged on the entire tree. And the tree has already been cut down. That's what this movie is saying. It really seemed like this film was not quite a warning, but like more of like a sentencing of what we are doing as a species. Do I totally believe in this like super nihilistic idea? I don't know if I subscribe to it as much, but that doesn't mean that I can't say it's a fantastic argument for it and that it isn't a fantastic portrayal of it. I think you don't have to agree with what a movie is saying to think that it's a really great movie. So that's my little analysis of Bugonia. Thank you for clicking and thank you for watching. I like went to the Museum of Death today in LA and I'm still very traumatized from it. I'm just trying to be, it was so much more intense than I thought it would be. And I was going to go alone, which I'm really glad I didn't, because I think I would have been really scared. And I'm not like into true crime, but I'm into history and I'm into like morbid things and oddities and stuff. And they had John Wayne Gacy's clown shoes there and pieces of Richard Ramirez's hair, which is like so heavy and so crazy and dark. And like, it kind of got me thinking about this idea where it's like humans can be so bad, and it's a very nihilistic and scary thought that we are exactly the same because we're humans. Yeah. This is a very, very dark film. Peace and love.